We're here in the Synergy Baku training camp. It's a new team for you. How's it been so far?
Yeah, really good. It's just getting to know everybody, lots of new names. It's a pretty big roster for a continental team, 17 guys in total, and a few of them I know, but most of them are new names, so it's so far so good.
How did the move come about?
Well, I was looking to get back into Europe. I've got an Italian fiance, and just living in Australia wasn't quite working out. And Synergy Baku races all over the world, but 50% in Europe. So I can live in Italy next year, and it's going to be a lot, perfect for my lifestyle.
Have you got a place sorted out, and if so, where will you be?
I'm going to be living in close to Como. It's just the town of where my fiance's from, so it's still close to a lot of the Aussie guys. The AIS base in close to Varese, so it's pretty ideal.
If we look at your career early on, I mean, you had some really big results. I think you were one of the youngest, if not the youngest, winner of the Aussie title, and I remember the time they didn't give you the elite jersey because of your age. You had this a succession of good results. I think second under 23 worlds as well. Can you talk about that and just getting into the sport and being so successful at such a young age?
Yeah, I guess I started when I was about 13, and I wasn't particularly strong, but I started to build up quite a strong work ethic, and I trained really hard and trained well, did everything properly. I started getting better and better results, and eventually my body just, I think still in those days, some teams, were tempted to throw you in the deep end, and I did 2 Grand Tours by the time I was 21, and that was pretty much, that was it. And my body just didn't go anymore. I just couldn't push. I had the heart problem, I had mononucleosis, I had Bell's palsy. I was pretty much just a wasted man at 21, and I had 3 years off. And honestly, even when I started back again, I had a few issues, like the same things coming up. I'd just burn out, and it was just the mononucleosis coming back or something, and it wasn't quite right. Even this season, I had a few hurdles getting past it, but now I'm pretty much past it all, and my body's quite healthy again. And I had the off season, and immediately after the off season, I was better than at the end of the season when I was training, just because my body's, I think it's started to beat everything now. So it's like after 2 years of training again, after 3 years off, I think I'm ready to be able to see if I can be quite good again and get back to those levels. I can push my body, and it seems to respond at least now.
It must have been pretty worrying, the tachycardia and everything else. What sort of symptoms were you getting?
Well, no, funny, when you get caught in the bubble, you don't think of it. You're just like, oh, this is just tachycardia. But then a few episodes and a few people around that had unfortunate things passing away, it makes you think sort of stopping cycling. But even though mine was never the case that could happen, it sort of it is a slightly worrying thing. But the thing that affected me the most was the mononucleosis. That was horrible to go through, because you'd go from being super strong, and then the next day you had nothing at all. It's the worst feeling ever. You couldn't finish at B grade local criterium, and it was terrible to go through. Actually, that was worse than the heart. That was more of the reason why I stopped. Probably, I told everybody I stopped because of the heart, and it was quite worrisome. But really, I just couldn't go fast anymore at all. I was not even a level of a under 17 rider some weeks.
How do you reckon you picked that up? Was it doing the Grand Tours so young? Were you sick at some point? I mean, how did it come about?
I don't know. Yeah, I think as soon as I did the Vuelta the first time when I was 20, as soon as after that I started training, and all of a sudden I just stopped once, and I thought I just got sick, and then 4 weeks more of training when I felt good again, and then suddenly it happened again, and it just kept going, and it was just like a roadblock every month. In the end, the last season I did as a pro with Rabobank, I got a few good results when I didn't have any of the symptoms, but as soon as I had the symptoms, I had to look for excuses, because if it doesn't come up on the blood tests either, you just look like you're a wuss.
Sure. How difficult was it mentally to stop the sport and to walk away from racing your bike?
Really easy, actually. Yeah, it wasn't hard for me. I didn't, a lot of people ask me if I was bitter about it at all, but it was quite good. The experience I've had in the last 5 years since stopping have been really good. It sort of fast-tracked me towards adulthood, I'd say. I can look back on things and I'm happy the way everything's gone. I've had a lot of setbacks, but it's all been a big, long mental test, and it's what life's meant to be. So.
And you're still young. I mean, you've still got many, many years ahead of your racing career.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's been a year and a bit since I've been racing again, or nearly 2 years now. And I think I'm ready, right at the stage now with Baku, to see if I can really just get back to that odd level. And, if I do it for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I mean, Chris Horner's 42. I'm a long way away from that. I don't think I really would look to ride for that long. 32 would be pretty good, actually, to ride to 32. But, it's, we'll see.
Did you work out things to do to, keep your system good? Nutrition, training, sleep, etc. Is there certain things that you do to look after yourself?
Yeah, I try and avoid, I started to be really conscious with foods, and I avoid a lot of, refined foods if I can. But then the main thing was I just saw a naturopath, and this guy worked with me and basically cleaned the virus out of my body. I know a lot of people, there's not a lot of science on it, but it actually was the only thing that worked. And at the same time, that took all of the extra beats away from, the sort of day-to-day beats that people have. But with extra stress, you get extra ectopic beats, and I don't even have any of them anymore. So it was like a double whammy. He's just cured me from everything, and I'll still, when I go back to Australia, I'll probably see him a few times and make sure that just stay on top of things. But I'm back to living, I eat exactly the foods that I desire now based on what tastes good, so it's quite good.
What did you do away from the sport? I mean, you were coaching the Malaysian riders at some point. Can you talk about that, and also the other things that you did when you were no longer racing?
Yeah, I did. I tried my hand at a few things, and I didn't really do the same thing for 3 years. I did a little bit of development of property with my brother that worked out well, and I did the Malaysian coaching, and I did a bit of importing, and kind of dabbled in a few different things. But ultimately I got pulled back into cycling, and to have an extra go and just almost to prove that I could do it, and that's still remains strong. And probably my best results will be just when most people will say I can't do it, and then I'll just find something inside to be good again. But I'm now doing a finance degree, and I think the experience I've had in the 3 years that I stopped have sort of made me realise that I want to do something, but I want to have a bit of a base and have an actual degree and maybe a master's, and then when I do decide to go out into the real world, I can do it with a little bit more certainty.
I guess it's about balance as well. I mean, it sounds like you were really heavy on the sport at a young age, and now you find the right balance between on-bike stuff and off-bike stuff, and I guess intellectual stuff with the studying, etc.
Yeah, it's definitely balancing act. When you're thrown in the deep end and you become not a star, but you become, people look up to you when you're young, you don't get to learn the real reality of the world. And then even in the 3 years that I stopped, it took me a long time to really find what I was searching for. And even now, you're still learning every day, and probably change my idea on what my future will be quite often. But yeah, I think I've found the right balance now. I'm studying technically full-time, the finance degree, and riding. I still can ride as hard as I want, and you get tired by the end of the day, and you can still study in the afternoon. And yeah, I think I should, by the end of this, I'll be able to be set up at least to enter the real world.
You've been with Drapac for a couple of seasons. What do you think have been the key results in that time?
It's hard to say. I won a few races with them. For me, the 7th at the Nationals was quite good. It was not even a year after I started riding again, and it wasn't a win, but for me it was quite a victory just to be there without any problems, to get around a hard lap at Buninyong in Australia without having any problems, and to be there and talked about as one of the potential winners was quite an achievement. I guess that was really the sticking point. After that, in the year, I seemed to have form when there was no racing, and have not that much form when there was racing, so it was not really a great season for me. I ended up with reasonable results through the year, but yeah, I think next year I've got to do something a bit better. Cycling's not that much fun if you aren't as strong as anybody. Like the amount of times I was in the right position was ridiculous, and I just couldn't finish it off this year. So I need to make sure I go back to the drawing board and understand why that happened. And yeah, cycling's a lot more fun when you can dominate.
Well, presumably having these couple of years in your legs now is going to stand to you that you've got that racing base back.
Yeah, like this season didn't go that well, but as soon as I had an off season of a month, I've only been training for a week now, and I'm probably better than I was all of the season. So I think it's time for my body it knows it's got to do something again.
Do you have an idea of what your first races are likely to be?
Definitely doing the nationals, but I'm not pointing towards that. There's 20 million Green Edge riders and 30 million Drapac, and I've heard Simon Gerrans is training the house down already, and I'm looking forward to a nice snowy white Christmas and lots of food. So I'll do it, but I'm gonna just have fun there, and then we'll do the Sun Tour, and first the Tour in New Zealand, and then probably the Sun Tour. So those two races together will be pretty good. I'll be motivated for those, and it'll be good to race against some World Tour teams. That's always motivating, and then it'll be good for Baku to see how we go against them.
And then presumably after that, is it back to Europe, or do you think Langkawi is a possibility?
Yes, Asia's definitely, there'll be Asian races throughout it, but I'm not sure when I'll go back to Europe. Probably depending on when my fiance wants me back, more so. But it could be February, and then do some racing in Europe or Asia. I want to do a lot of racing in Japan this year. I absolutely love going to Japan. I did the Tour of Japan this year. And that's got to be the nicest race I've ever done. And then I did a race called Tour of Okinawa in November, and that was fantastic. So I'd love to race in Japan as much as possible. And I'd hopefully be able to make the team for the Tour of Azerbaijan too. I think that would be a bit of a highlight, doing that with the team from Baku. So.
How has the team been thus far?
Baku?
Yeah.
Oh, really good. I think we've got a good team for next year. I think it should be the best continental team, or one of the best continental teams in the world, and probably give a few pro-continental teams a run for its money. Lots of good young guys, nobody over 30. Everybody seems quite motivated, so and really good staff involved. I think that's the main thing they've got going for them as well. It's a lot of guys, and most of the directors can probably beat us if they want to.
What do you want to achieve from this coming season? I mean, if you right now could list the things that you want to pull off in the year, what would they be?
Well, I'd like to, if I could get a stage win at the Sun Tour, and maybe a couple of maybe an overall win in Asia somewhere, and maybe one individual win in Europe, I'd sign for it here, and that would be fantastic. And I'd also like to be able to put back into the team and help some of the Azeri guys, some of the younger guys. We've got guys that are probably really strong finishers and sprinters, and be able to help them up for some wins. So a bit of a mix of team aspirations as well as personal.
At 28, I mean, you still, as we said, you still have time on your side. So long term, do you have aspirations to do World Tour level, or where do you see it, a little further ahead?
Yeah, it's a tricky question. I guess when I first started back, I wanted to prove a point that I could make it back to the top. But having seen this side of cycling, I actually quite like it. I don't really aspire that much to be a World Tour rider. I'd never say no, but it's quite fun. It really is. Like, we get to travel a lot more. There's a little bit less stress. The people are really nice. There's cool riders, and just the races we do there's a lot more diversity, and you tend to be a protagonist rather than a follower. And I did 2 years at World Tour, and I guess most of it was plagued by illness. But even when I wasn't ill, it wasn't like you were in the race. Sometimes you were just part of the race. And I guess, when I did the Giro, it was Riccardo Ricco and Piepoli riding away from me. So that probably says why I was a passenger. And maybe in these days it would be slightly different. But, in this style racing, you get to see a lot more. And, you travelling through Asia is really good fun. I mean, I'd recommend it to any World Tour rider. That a lot of them, I think, even this year, they probably look down upon continental teams and say, I couldn't finish my career there, but it's the most fun I've had in cycling. So
again, it's
saying that, yeah, if Baku, moved up to pro-continental level, that would be also ideal, but I'm enjoying this year anyway.